You are listening to KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank, your partner in possible.
All right, folks, before we get started with today's episode, we got to talk about our title sponsor, Emprise Bank. There's more options to banking now more than ever. Who you work with is more important than how close they are to your home. Emprise has digital banking that meets you where you are, on your phone, on your computer, or even your smartwatch. A trusted partner is at your fingertips. Shout out Emprise Bank. Let's get to it. We got a third mic tonight that is not AB. It looks a little different than our normal third mic, but this guy's a little better at basketball than old AB. We've got Landen Lucas, a guy I think we've tried to get you on a few times, but it's just never worked out. Happy to have you on. I guess before we get going, kind of just, I'm sure people are curious. I know you have a podcast, so feel free. I know we're competitors, but you can give it a shameless plug. But just update us on what you're doing these days and what have you been up to since your KU days?
Well, I currently am just hanging out. I live in Arizona now, golfing, playing some poker. I got 2 little kids under 2 years old, so that takes up a lot of my time. Kind of a full-time dad right now. But I was playing a little while afterwards and played overseas a little bit, had some opportunities in the summer league and whatnot, but ultimately just decided that if it wasn't the highest level of basketball, it was really hard for me to continue to push my body through injuries and fight through it. Honestly, my play style is not very fun. So I really like to be doing it on a very good team and in the top level. And when that really wasn't the option for me, I just decided to move on. I'm interested in so many other things and getting into more of that now. I got to play poker quite a bit. I'm pursuing that further. Field of 68 reached out to me about maybe doing some sports media stuff. So I've been doing that a little bit, getting into it, trying to be like you guys and just exploring all kinds of stuff, trying to see what I want to get into, permanently moving forward.
Yeah, love it. And we saw a lot. You mentioned poker, but honestly, what caught my eye last night and the reason we even reached out to have you on tonight was you put on got involved in a little sports betting last night and did what,
yes.
We are big advocates of if the Hawks are down inside Allen Fieldhouse and you can get them as an underdog, you have to do it. You just
they've made me so much money betting them live. I mean, I think I made about $5,000 last night just betting them. My girl's the DJ and she's the one that really bets them. But as soon as I saw them down 10 with like 5 minutes left, plus 550, you're telling me that Kansas at home with 5 minutes left and possession down 10 can't win that game 1 out of 5 or 6 times. And my poker mindset kicks in where when you find a spot like that, you just have to take it, and if it loses sometimes, but more times than not, you're gonna make profit off of that. And I think the algorithm just doesn't factor in the fact that Coach Self and Allen Fieldhouse is a really great combination. It's hard to go in there and finish the job very often.
Yeah, so obviously Allen Fieldhouse is a magical place. And I just wanted to know, like, from a player standpoint, like when you played at KU, was there ever a time where I guess you felt like down on the team or you thought there was a chance they might lose, or did you always feel comfortable in that building?
I always felt pretty comfortable. And the story that I tell people a lot is that, with the home and home in Big 12, you get a chance to play every team twice a year. And it's crazy how often a team feels like a completely different team in Allen Fieldhouse than it did on the road. I mean, it almost feels like your matchup he gets fatigued a little quicker. He doesn't feel as strong as he does. You just feel bigger than them all the time. I mean, it almost feels like you're playing a completely different team in Allen Fieldhouse. And then you put on top of that the fact that no matter how the game is going, you always feel like, okay, we're going to win this. It's a shock when that it doesn't go your way. And that's only happened to me a few times in Allen Fieldhouse. But, no matter what the game was, it just always felt like, okay, we're down or things aren't going our way, but we're going to come back and win. And I think last night you saw, that long stretch of, it felt like hours in real time of no basket. And yet they ended up coming back at the end and winning it. It just gives you that confidence. And I'm sure it takes a ton of confidence from other teams. It has to, just based off of my experience playing against those teams.
Yeah, and I mean both Big 12 games so far at home have been nail biters. KU had to come from behind, and obviously you want to win comfortably, but those are almost more fun for me because the field house is going to come alive. And just you talking about the field house where people would kind of crumble, like thinking of 2 games you played in would be the OU game, the 3 overtime game where dudes are hitting the backboard on free throws for OU. I think the same thing with West Virginia, and me and Ryan have talked about this all the time. I feel like no one ever hits clutch shots late in Allen Fieldhouse. Like they're complete bricks. Last night they had a chance to tie it late, and it was an air ball, I think. But I guess just touch on why Allen Fieldhouse is so special, and it feels like there's like ghosts in there.
Well, and actually, I wanted to say this. Like, can you sense, kind of on what B-Turn's saying? Can you sense? I felt like last night. I think it was after Jalen's 3. Can you sense when the building has all of a sudden, you can tell OU was starting to dribble a little differently and they were a little more tight. Like, can you as a player sense that as like, okay, these guys are officially shook. Now's the time we pounce.
I still can as a fan watching on TV. I mean, it's just crazy how you notice it. And it's from the beginning. I mean, while we're going through warmups and stuff, I remember, you could just kind of feel it from the other team that they know that they're going to be lucky to even keep this close. And then once they do, it almost feels like they're just waiting for that momentum shift. And then once it comes, it's just like, all right, here we go again, and you could just see it in them. You can see how their shots change, as you said, it's tough to make clutch shots for them. They start making mistakes, and then it just goes downhill. And I think it's just a testament to the fans. And then just the history of it. I feel like even the other team pulling up to the field house, they just know like, all right, this is going to be hell for us to try to get a win in here. And so it's such an advantage, especially in a league as tough as the Big 12.
Right. Who was the coach that called timeout when they went up 2-0 in Allen Fieldhouse?
God. Was there a coach that did that?
Wasn't it Scott Drew or something? Someone went up 2-0 in the field house and they called a timeout because they're like, holy shit.
It might have been, but I mean, Scott Drew's done some weird. I remember he pulled his guys out before our intro video.
Coach Self hated that.
Yeah,
he brought that up every time we played them.
No, but the OU game's funny because I remember that game was incredible. Buddy had like 50 or 60 or whatever. But I remember I think it was Kadeem Latin. He got a rebound late and was like beating his chest like they were about to win. He goes to the free throw line. I think he hit the backboard twice.
Well, quick story on that. The reason he was at the free throw line was because of me. I committed a over the back foul, which that late in the game it was way too ticky tack of a call. You got to just let us play. But all things aside, all I was thinking was I cannot in the biggest matchup of the year, 1 versus 2. I'm like, I cannot be the reason we lose this game. So please just miss this. But he went to the line and it was so broke. I mean, it was so funny. Coach Self knew it was going to be. I think in the huddle he had mentioned something like, he's going to miss these. Just get the rebound and let's go to overtime. Like everyone knew that he had no chance.
And OU's had great chances to beat us at home now that I think about it. I know 16 and then even 17, I think that was Frank's senior night where he was just going nuts. And that's kind of a testament to Allen Fieldhouse when they flashed the graphic of last night that OU hasn't beat us in Allen Fieldhouse since 1993.
It's crazy because there's been a lot of close games with OU. But that's what it does. So B-Turn mentioned the 2017 team. And we were kind of talking earlier, and it's like, so that team had huge expectations, I think, because obviously Josh Jackson came, Frank, Devontae, you guys were all back, Spee was back, but also that 2016 team was really freaking good. You guys were number 1 overall seed, and you lost Perry and Wayne. And so I kind of look at it as like, okay, you replace Wayne with Josh Jackson, kind of similar to how this team just plugged Grady Dick right into, Ochai's spot or CB's spot and McCullough into CB's spot. So it's like, is it easy when you've got a core of guys back to just kind of say, okay, like Grady, I know you're young, but we know what we're doing. Just listen to it. Like, have you been impressed at how well and quick this team has meshed, even though there are a lot of newcomers and new faces?
Super impressed with Grady. I mean, his maturity and the way he's handling some of these games and situations and stepping up and making plays. Man, he's impressed me so much. And I thought this team, I said it, I think it was after just the preseason game. It was before Duke. I thought this team had potential to be better than last year's team personally. And that was without knowing what Grady was going to end up turning into. But to answer your question, I think it is a big part of it, but it's also just a culture that's created at Kansas by Coach Self, by that coaching staff, by the history, by the former players. It really doesn't matter who's returning and who's back and stuff. It's going to be, just embraced and everybody involved with the program, who's been involved with the program, is going to bring all those newcomers along to just let them know. The crowd's going to bring them along. I mean, you bring everyone up to speed pretty easily. Obviously, it's helpful, especially in big games, to have people who've been through it. But when you go to a school like Kansas, there's just those expectations that no matter if you're a freshman, a transfer, if it's your first time playing there, if you weren't a big contributor the year before, everybody needs to step up and fill those roles. And you can definitely feel that as a player at Kansas.
So we're obviously super excited about this team, number 2 team in the country right now. And we've kind of talked about it. I personally think they can get even better, especially defensively, because I think DeJuan, KJ, Kevin McCullough, Bill Self hypes him up a lot. So I wanted to hear your thoughts on that, and if you think they could get better as a team throughout the year, and especially defensively.
Oh, for sure. Especially with Coach Self, because that's like his whole emphasis throughout the whole year is just figuring out how to be as good defensively as you can at the end. And I've watched games. I remember over COVID, there were some games that popped up on TV, and I've watched some tournament games that I've played in. And it's crazy to see just the defensive movement and chemistry that we developed at the end of the year compared to some of those earlier games in the season. Every Bill Self team seems to develop that throughout the year, and I think this team's going to be no different. They have a good core of defenders up front, which is the most important thing. And then if they can figure out a way to handle bigs, I think that's going to be the biggest thing, is how they handle a big that can pass out of a trap. Because if they run into somebody like that, that could give them some troubles. But if they work on their rotation, or if a big can step up and say, hey, I'm going to take him one-on-one, then that's going to help the team a ton in those games. But that would be my only worry as of now. The rest of it, for sure, I mean, it's just Coach Self. He gets them working every day in practice to make sure that come tournament time, everybody's on the same wavelength, everybody's moving together, and it's just flawless on defense by then.
Yeah, so you mentioned bigs, and that's been a huge question mark from the beginning of the season. It was who was going to start at the 5. People thought it was going to be Clements. KJ got the early start and has never looked back, and he, has had maybe the most improved player we've seen in a while from one year to the next. But there still is that question, I think, of like, okay, he is 6, whatever. They list him as 6'7". I don't think he's 6'7". So you
they
as
always
a big,
boost a little bit.
You as a big, like, there's been stretches where early in the year Ernest looked really good. There's been stretches where Zuby looked really good, and then you see Clements last night come in and get 10. So, like, from your perspective, who do you see, by late February, March, as KJ is going to keep being the starter? I don't think he's losing his starting role, but like, who's the guy that you see kind of emerging as that big off the bench that'll get big minutes in situations where we need them?
I mean, it's a good question. It's one that I think Coach Self's been trying to figure out, that staff's been trying to figure out. I've personally, throughout the year, have continued to talk on my podcast about, some big needs to step up. KJ may not be the answer. It may not be the guy who can play 20, 30 minutes at that position. And he continues to just prove me wrong. I mean, I don't know I should learn from, some of my years there where it felt like that was the narrative most of the time until I got some confidence and fit the team well, played my role well, and then it was best fit for the team. And I think that he's starting to come into his own, really feel confident. I think as far as, those bigs go behind him, it just needs to be somebody that can come in and do their role, which is going to be defense, rebounding, screen, and that's about it, to a very high level for those limited minutes. And I think you're right. KJ is going to continue to be the starter. He's shown enough. It would be nice to get a little bit more rebounding at that position, because not every night it's going to be as easy for those guards to come in and get as many rebounds as they are, especially when you play those big teams like a Tennessee or something. But KJ's developing, and that little mid-lane floater is perfect against those big teams like a Tennessee or anybody they may face that has some big bigs. But, as far as those guys coming along, if I had to guess from what I've seen, I would say Zuby would be the guy who could play that role well. He sets really good screens. I think defensively he does a few good things. Zach obviously came in and hit some big shots, but I'm not sure who's going to be the guy, to be honest. Yeah. And I think that he's going to have to continue to try guys out, and hopefully those guys come in and play hard and don't do too much looking over their shoulder and really just take advantage of every minute they get out there, because KJ is going to have a game where he gets into foul trouble, or there's going to be a game where there's a really big guy on the other side that is just maybe too much for him to handle. And at that point in time, we're going to have somebody who we know, okay, this is who we're going to. And right now, it could be any one of four guys.
So that's Cam Martin in this whole conversation.
Even Cam, I had him on the podcast, and it was after he played a couple minutes and he was feeling really confident. But Coach Self is still telling him, okay, we know you can score, but you got to play defense, you got to rebound, you got to do those other things. And I think he's just waiting for somebody to step up. And it's really tough around this time of year because in practice, everything gets cut short. You got managers in, you got, really some dummy defense, some walkthrough type stuff because of all the quick turnaround. So it's hard to prove yourself in practice. It's going to come from those short minutes in games, somebody stepping up and having a few games back to back of nice stretch minutes for them to really establish themselves in that backup spot.
Yeah. The thing that excites me with KJ is you can tell he's been working. Like you said, he's developed a little floater in the lane, and then he was terrible from the line to start the year. I think he's still at 59% for the year because of it. But lately, lately he's
like 0 of 13.
He's 23 for his last 29. So yeah, him working he's been working. But I guess when do we get to a point where we feel insanely confident just with KJ, or do you think the fan base or maybe people like us aren't confident just because of his height?
I think it has to do a little bit with the height. And I think, for me personally, it's just tough because I saw that Tennessee game and, I saw kind of what happened inside, and there were some struggles with that size offensively and defensively. And you just wonder, when that game comes back around, and if it does in the tournament, what's the answer? But he has developed so much that I do think he could be that answer. And if as a team they start really finding a way to work together to fix some of those problems, he already kind of did on the offensive side, like I said, by developing that little just stopping short of going into the bigs is helping him get a lot of shots off that he wasn't. I remember in that Tennessee game, he was taking one dribble and trying to go up against the bigs, and that wasn't working for him. So now, maybe you replay that game and he's better offensively, and then defensively, if they can, get some help defense a little better, he could be the answer. And I don't want to continue to write him off because he's just continuing to not write back, as Geno Smith said. But, he's just continuing to develop, prove me wrong, and prove, a lot of people wrong, and show how valuable he is to this team. And so, we have a lot of good tests in the Big 12, and we should be able to get a lot of answers, whether it's sustainable and he can start playing, that 25, 30 plus minutes come tournament time.
Yeah, I geniusly bet on the under on KJ Adams 10.5 points last night because I was like, okay, I love the guy, but he's got to cool down a bit, and then he goes for 20
career high, right?
Yeah,
he's got
I'm glad he made me look stupid.
9 straight games in double figures.
It's crazy, but
that was a bad bet, I would say.
Yeah, not great. Wasn't a great night. So Landon, you mentioned earlier the kind of the narrative around you when you were at Kansas, and me and B-Turn were talking earlier today, I feel like it's in a way similar to DeJuan last year, because I remember when DeJuan started, the fan base saw Remy on the bench, right? They were like, Remy's this exciting, the guy that scored 20 a game at Arizona State. Why the heck's Remy not starting? DeJuan, not flashy, but slowly we started to learn, okay, this guy does what Bill Self wants. He buys into the system. And in a way, I think that's very similar to how you were. I think it took a while. I mean, you had Check Diallo behind you, Cliff Alexander behind you. People were, kind of saying like, wait, why are these McDonald's All-Americans not playing? And slowly we were all like, oh, it's because Landen seals better. Landen sets better screens. Landen rebounds better. So I guess, how is that for you as a player? Did you hear those things and did it bother you, or did you just kind of know, hey, I'm going to continue to do my job and the fans will eventually buy in?
I mean, I definitely heard it because it was coming all the way down to Coach Self and the coaching staff. I mean, it was everyone. It wasn't just fans saying it. I mean, Coach Self would be honest with me saying it every year. He would say it every week that we have to find someone else. And, that was just motivation to me to continue to play my role. And I think something that people kind of overlook is how good one player makes the players around him. And that's just as valuable as how much you can contribute yourself, is how good you make the other players. I mean, there would be small plays where I would seal somebody off and give somebody else an easy layup, or set a good screen, or get an extra possession. Or on defense, I would be able to handle my guys so that everyone else didn't have to worry about, helping out or whatever it may be. And those small things were noticed over time by Coach Self, to the point where then it got to a point where he knew exactly what I brought to the team, and I had full trust from him. And then from my teammates, they knew how much I could help them out. And so I think that that's something that, you talked about it with DeJuan. You see it a lot with KJ now. I mean, if you can just come in and make the guys around you better, play your role well, that goes a long way. And it's not always the most talented player who can come in and maybe score a lot or do some things great that are, appealing to the eye and to the fan, because there may be a lot of small things that aren't going well. That's hurting the team in different ways that aren't being seen. And it may not be like a direct something that you could easily point out. But, over time watching film, you can see, okay, hey, this is creating shots for other guys that are way more open than if so-and-so was in. And that just was kind of the narrative that built up until my junior year, when the other 4 starters came up to, the coaching office, and they were like, okay, hey, we want Landen in there with us. I think that was something that I was like, okay, I finally, kind of earned my way. Even after sophomore year, things going well and stuff, I had to really build it back again and build that trust to the point where those guys knew I was going to do everything I could to make it as easy as possible on them and do all the dirty stuff. And I enjoyed it. I enjoyed that role, especially on a team like Kansas. I mean, you're talking about the number 1 team my last couple years. We had really good teams, and being able to do it on a team like that, I mean, it's rewarding. So I enjoyed it, and I think my teammates and coaches appreciated it as well. And you saw that in the minutes that I was getting my last few years.
Yeah, and that's what we've said that multiple times this year, and even last year, talking about DeJuan, is if Bill Self's playing you a lot or he's talking you up a lot, like, you need to pay attention to that player, because obviously he sees things a lot differently than us. And I think KU fans obviously can just be really spoiled. Like you said, it's not like you or DeJuan average a ton of points, but we've had great point guards. We've had great bigs. Like, we had Withy before you, T-Rob, the Twins, Shady, Cole Aldridge. Yeah, he was okay. He's pretty good. He's all right in the NBA. And then DeJuan, we obviously had Frank, Devontae, Sharon, Tyshawn, all those good point guards. So I feel like when we see a guy not averaging 15, 20 and just going off every night, that we assume that, I guess, maybe they aren't very good. But yeah, 2016, like we said, number 1 overall seed, had a great chance to win it. And then 17, I think a lot of people can make a case for that being one of the best, or at least most electric KU teams ever, at least under Bill. You guys were so good, and you started every game, and I mean, like you said, Bill was on your ass saying he was going to over recruit you. And I know Doak was there, Diallo, Cliff. And I guess, I mean, you did everything right. And that's what I'm saying is you played your role perfectly. And that's what Dewan is doing right now. And I think KJ too, I think people were down on him before the year and he's been awesome, but yeah, your career was awesome. And it reminds me of Dewan. Just, we finally gave him his flowers last year after he was locking dudes up in the tournament. So,
and the similarity, and this was something I was going to ask, you both redshirted, and I'm always curious. Like sometimes it blows my mind for me, a guy that's watched Kansas basketball my whole life, and you're watching and you're like, and it's kind of even like MJ Rice right now. Like you want him to do well, but he's missing those little things that Bill Self wants from him. And I used to always be like, what he wants, just go out and do it. And sometimes it seems hard for guys to, get that. So did your redshirt year, and do you think Dewan's redshirt year is you just kind of practice and sit there and observe during the game? Did that, like, at what point were you like, okay, if I just go in, play defense, rebound, seal, set good screens, like, did you just, did that just clicked, or did it take like a year of watching to really, really get that?
I think that's a good point you made about the redshirt year. I haven't really thought about it, but that is a lot of the time where I spent in practice, making practices my games and developing some of that stuff. But I would say it was probably my junior year when it really hit me. My sophomore year with Cliff, having some troubles and stuff, I was able to get some good playing time and start throughout the postseason and get some confidence. But then that following summer, we went over to Korea, and that was a mess. Coach Self was on my ass the whole time. And I think I was really in that mindset, like, oh, now that I started and, had some good games, now I got to, start hitting a turnaround jump shot and stuff, which, that was just my next step progression without really taking a step back to be like, okay, that's not me. And I think my junior year, when I started kind of getting into a flow with things, and my teammates were seeing it, it really hit me that I have a really simple job. I can go out there and execute no matter what. I mean, I don't have to have a good shooting night. I don't have to rely on things bouncing my way. I can still play hard. I can still set screens well. I can still go after rebounds. I can still play defense. And like that took so much of the pressure off of me, because I wasn't worried about, I got to go out there and perform on the offensive end or hope that things go my way. I could just do those things every night. And once that kind of clicked, and then, Coach Self was putting his full, trust and confidence into me, it just was reinforcing in my head, like, okay, this is what I need to be doing. And then it was pretty easy after that. But it is tough, and it's a battle. I mean, every time you take a step forward, you think that you need to be producing more on offense, or you think, hey, I need to be doing this or that, or you got people in your ear like, oh, you got to show a little bit of this or a little bit of that. And it's probably a struggle that a lot of guys go through, but ultimately you got to come down to, hey, this is what Coach Self is asking from me. This is what's best for the team. And then the further the team goes, it's going to just ultimately be better for you in the long run. And so I think you see some guys who can pick that up and get it, and it's easy for them. It became easy for me. But there's some guys that just will go their whole career sometimes where it just won't register or click with them. And it's probably split down the middle which way you go.
So as much as it sounds like Bill was on your ass, I just want to talk about how much he loves you now. I don't know if you heard recently, but I think it was Brian Haney talking to him, talking about I think it was a thing on Twitter. And so Brian Haney brought it up to him, talking about the best players under him defensively. And he mentioned you really early into some of the names he said. So I guess I wanted to see how that feels with you, hearing that from the best coach in the country.
No, I mean, it feels great, especially because it was something I took pride in. It was something that I despised. If he even thought to put a trap on a big, I hated that. And I don't think I let him. By my senior year, I could just say no, and he would be like, all right. But we would be going through shoot around or something, and he would kind of do it just to see my reaction. And then once I told him, no, I got him, then, he would let me have those guys. And it was fun. It was a challenge to me. I mean, even all the way to Kate Swanigan there at the end. I mean, I loved that. I loved that, taking pride in that and that one-on-one matchup. And there's all kinds of small tips and tricks I picked up, I think, all the way back from my freshman year against Joel, because every day in practice I was going against him, and it was like, all right, how am I going to stop him today? And it was just something that I picked up, little things I can do to kind of cheat different ways to make up for maybe being less athletic in certain areas or whatnot, and use my strength in others. And it came to a point where, especially by my junior year, but definitely especially by my senior year, but definitely my junior year, I felt like I could guard anybody one-on-one. And I think that's a big help to the team, because then you just don't have to worry about traps, which is a whole, you spend a whole week in practice figuring out how to trap and rotate out of it and what shooters to get to. And if you can eliminate that and just say, okay, hey, Landon's got him, that's a big advantage. So I do appreciate that from him. Obviously I wasn't the biggest shot blocker or big play kind of guy, but there were a lot of small things that I took pride in, help defense, being in the right spot at the right time, that I think over time he realized, okay, there's a lot of things that Landon's doing on defense that's helping this team as a whole. And so it was nice to get that recognition from him while I was playing there. And it's nice that, even a few years after, he's still, mentioning it.
Yeah. And then there's so many players that will come out and say, like, Bill Self is so good at getting his players to do certain things. Like, he's so good at motivating his guys. So when he was saying that stuff to you, like, we need to get a new big in here, I think that's what makes him so great, because he knew exactly what he was doing with you to get you fired up and get you to do certain things that he's so good at.
Yeah. He told me that for my visit. He said, hey, I think I said at senior night, he told me the only game that you'll start here will be senior night. And if you start any other game, this program's going to be in bad shape. It's just like, okay, well,
you were like 17 years old.
Yeah, I think I was 18, about to commit there. But for me, I don't know if he got this vibe or if he just does this with everyone, but it really I appreciated the honesty, and then it motivated me. I wanted to go out there and prove that I could help this team and contribute. And I think a lot of things just took time, and he just realized over time that those small things that don't show up that I can do for the team. So it was nice to prove him wrong, and ultimately he became a big fan of mine, and really pushed to help me along the way as well. And so I do appreciate that from him. But yeah, he was always honest with me from the jump, and brutally honest sometimes. But I took it and kept moving. And some guys can't. I've seen some guys who respond negatively to that, and if you do, he's just gonna, he feeds into that. If you show any side of weakness, he just digs and digs until you either give up or you respond the way he wants. And I've seen some guys give up and end up transferring or not playing. And he really puts you at that decision where you got to be like, okay, am I going to fully buy into this, or am I going to take some other way out?
Can you remember a specific moment where you believe that was the most mad you'd ever seen Bill Self?
Most mad I've seen him. Okay, there's this story one time where I forgot what. I think we were at Oklahoma State. We probably lost. We had to lose because how mad he was. But it was like blizzard storm outside, and we usually take little planes, like private planes, to those short trips like that. And because of the weather, we had to take a bus instead. We weren't able to get on the planes. And we were driving back, and they had like ESPN on the little TVs and stuff, and they showed the highlights from our game. And I think now that I remember, I think it was Marcus Smart. He was doing like backflips on the floor or something afterwards, and he got so mad. And we had like headphones on, and I'm in the back. I sit all the way in the back with headphones on, and I could hear him yelling from the front at the TV. Like, I don't even know what he was yelling about, but I heard him yelling. Next thing you know, the bus pulls over. He's pacing outside the bus for like 20 minutes. Like, I don't know what, he's just needed a break. something about that ESPN highlight triggered him so much that he was pacing in the snow. It's like blizzard storms outside, and he's outside pacing back and forth. And that was probably, I mean, I don't think I could, even tell you one word he said, but whatever it was, it pissed him off so much that was probably one of the times he was the most mad. I'm sure there's more, but that's one that comes to mind.
That was definitely like a mental game too, where he was like, "I'm gonna be so mad, and I'm gonna show these guys that I'm pacing in a blizzard. That's how pissed I am." And like, that's what he is. He's just a genius when it comes to that stuff.
Yeah.
So your redshirt year, obviously they had a ton of talent that year. Wiggs, Wayne came in, Joel, obviously. Is there certain moments like I guess a welcome to college moment when you got there that year?
I would say probably, yeah, my first like week of practice. It's tough to prepare for that in high school. I was fortunate that I had some really good competition in high school. I always played up in AAU with a pretty good team. And then I went to Findlay Prep that had a ton of guys who ended up going on to high-level college basketball and NBA. So I kind of got a feel for that. But it was tough. I mean, we had so many guys and so many bigs those first few years.
Even Tarek Black was there.
Tarek Black, I got in a fight with him one time. This is another story. I got in a fight with him. We were doing like war rebounding or something like that. And usually, you get in this little scrum in practice, people are immediately jump in, they'll hold you back and stuff. We got into a scrum and not one person came in between us. They all were just looking. I'm looking around like, yo, is anybody going to come in? So I was like, all right, we got to throw down. And he had the greatest quote of all time. I think he said, "We have nothing but time and space." And I was like, all right, he's serious about this. But I mean, it was fun because those are lessons that, and just experiences you go through that just builds your character. I'm, a freshman, young kid going up against, these monsters, and Jeff Whitty, and then Tarek Black, Joel Embiid, Jamari, all those guys. And so it definitely just was something that I could have, taken the easy way out or, just grind through. And I'm happy that I took the choice to grind through it and take those battles head on.
Yeah. So you were obviously with the bigs all the time, and obviously Joel Embiid has a huge personality now. I feel like he was kind of a shy guy when he got to KU. Like, did it take him long to, I guess, get comfortable or show his personality?
Well, Joel's funny because he comes off as shy, but that's like his little front to like be able to do whatever he wants. Cause then he plays it off like, "Oh, I didn't know." That was his favorite thing. Like his friend, "I didn't know." Like, "Yes, you did." And he would always play that coy, shy, like this kid, just straight from Africa, doesn't know much, just trying to make it through, when really like he's always had that personality around the team. He may not have shown it early on, but he definitely started getting confident. I remember, I think it was the Iowa State game where he went off at Iowa State, and after that, his whole like vibe changed, and you definitely could see him start getting his little swag and confidence after that. He had the goggles on and stuff. But yeah, I mean, his development basketball wise was something I've never seen before. Whenever you're around somebody day in and day out, and you can see the improvement, I mean, he was making such big leaps, just practice to practice. It was ridiculous. And it definitely, I guess his personality probably took leaps with his game as well.
Yeah. So, not to transition to a negative question, but we have kind of like an inside joke on this podcast where no matter what, by the end of an episode, we've somehow dragged ourselves into talking about the 2017 Oregon game. So I'm opening this up by saying this. I mean, we still say it to this day. Like, it's one of the most painful losses as a fan. I can't imagine what you guys felt like, but that's not really why. I'm not just bringing it up to bring it up. My point is, over the next few months, the big storyline is going to be the regionals in Kansas City. If KU gets a 1 seed, will they get to Kansas City? And so I wanted to ask you, did the Kansas City aspect add like a different element of pressure? Did that change things for you guys in the Oregon game? Or was the Oregon game just one of those things where things went wrong and you just didn't have time to fix it?
It's a good question. I'm gonna be honest. I've thought so little about that game since going through it.
I'm sorry.
But it could have. Now thinking about it, it very well could have. We had super high expectations. I mean, we ran through everybody up until that game. I don't think one person in the locker room expected to lose that game going into it. It was just like, all right, this is just another team we go through, and then we're going to the Final Four. Easy as that. But yeah, I mean, that could add a little bit of pressure, but that was just one of those games too, where I mean, it just felt like, oh God, here we go. And the Villanova game the year before, you kind of felt like that, but we also had some momentum swings in our favor too. And, we were able to bring it down to the end. But that Oregon game from start to finish was just sickening. I to this day haven't watched it back, haven't thought much about it. For me personally, I mean, you have to understand, from Oregon, both parents went to Oregon. Dad played at Oregon. My dad was doing the Talking Dutch, so he was the sports broad. He does their pregame show and stuff for Oregon. I was like recruit. Everybody wanted me to go there. I was hated when I decided not to go there, to go to Kansas, to the point where years later, my senior year playing them in the Elite Eight, I had to turn off my phone and then change my number because my number got out before that game. And I got unlimited texts, calls, death threats from Oregon fans that were just so.
5 years later, still mad about it?
I mean, that was like the worst possible ending for me, being from there and my ties with them and stuff. And then to just go out there and play as bad as possible, like not just me as a team, just everything just went as poorly as possible. I mean, that was like, it really hurt because that was the team that, it just felt, like I said, all of us felt, okay, we're going to the Final Four, then we're going to figure it out in the Final Four. And more than likely, a lot of guys probably thought, okay, well, this is our chance to win a championship, especially coming off the year before where we felt that way in 2016. And then Villanova catches us, like run through Oklahoma the next game, and then end up, winning in the championship against North Carolina, which, I mean, I'll take our chances against North Carolina for sure. We always beat North Carolina, it feels like. But I mean, coming off of that, going into the next year and then steamrolling, it felt like everyone going into that game. Kansas City may have been a factor, but it seems like you always go through a game like that in the tournament, and you just have to hope that game comes against a team that can't take advantage of it. And that was unfortunately a team that could. They had some NBA guys, some good players. I think last year you saw it, I think it was Miami game or one of the games, but it was just against a team that wasn't to that level. Yeah. And they couldn't take advantage of it. And that's what we needed. We needed to have that happen against anybody, that could still, keep us in the game. We could use the crowd, but from start to finish, it was weird. I didn't cramp all season. All of a sudden that game, I was cramping up. It was just like weird vibes from start to finish.
Nothing ever went right. And kind of like you said, like there's always a moment where KU makes a run, especially when the crowd's on. And right? It just never felt like you guys could string it together. And
and the thing that was really frustrating about that game, it was actually a tight game with like 5 or 6 minutes left in the first half, and then to end the half, they banked in like 2 or 3 threes to go up like double.
I forgot all about. I couldn't.
I'm sorry.
We're sick. We are sick humans that somehow always bring this game up. I think the championship in 2022 helped us heal a little bit, B-Turn. We've talked about it.
Yeah. No,
I'm sure it helps you guys. You know who it didn't help was the guys from that team. Frank, myself, especially us, because the following year they were able to take it to the Final Four, which it just feels like Final Four, like it's like the championship before the championship.
Once you're there,
we accomplished that. And for us, for myself, Frank, I think it was really just us two that was the last year that had been through the obviously Tyler and stuff. We had been through that Villanova game and then Oregon game. It's just like two teams that we should be in the Final Four at least one of the 2 years, and like both years to have that game where it's just like, that definitely hurts. But that's what makes the tournament so fun as a viewer, and that's what makes it suck so much as a player. Because like if that's a series or something, we smack them. I mean, that was like the worst possible game we could have played. And if we could have some more cracks at them, obviously, we would have won. But it's just one and done, and you can't have that one bad game happen in the Elite Eight against a good team.
We always say that if college basketball was like college football, Bill Self would be like Nick Saban. Like if you take the top 4 teams and the 1 seed show up and play 2 games, like Self would have so many titles, but the tournament's just a crapshoot. You have nights like that Oregon game happen. So
it's tough, but it is what it is.
I think we've only had maybe 1 player from that team on the pod, which is Mitch.
Just thinking,
and I don't even because Mitch was somehow still there in 2017. But
that's right,
because I remember him after LeGerald's 360. But I've always wondered, like, and obviously you played a ton of minutes, but was there ever times where you sat back and you're like, holy shit, this team is unreal?
Yeah, I mean, many times, especially like
Frank
those last 2 years, especially come March. I mean, I felt confident come March both years. I was, able to play 30 plus minutes, get all the confidence from coach. And then I had 2 point guards, which were like, I mean, for college point guards, like the best you could ask for, and Frank and Devontae. We had Svi, Perry, Wayne that first year, and then off the bench, Jamari, Sheck, all those guys. And then the next year we reloaded and came right back. I mean, there were plenty of times where I truly felt like, okay, we have to win. But, that's me thinking in the sense that the better team's just going to win the tournament, which is just not the case. You have to have things break your way. I think you saw that last year with the run to the championship. There were things that had to break their way. And it's not always the best team that wins, but they played the best in the right situations, handled business along the way, and got a championship. And I mean, there were many times I looked at those teams and felt so confident. I mean, how can you not be confident when, you're surrounded by guys who can get buckets on their own, guys who can take over games, guys who are freaks in nature, like a Josh Jackson or LeGerald or all these guys. I mean, I definitely felt very confident in them. And, like I said, you just think as a player, okay, we're the best team, we should win, until you're halfway through that final game where it's not going your way. And you're like, all right, well, this sucks. We're going to have to figure something out. And, like I said, that's just part of the tournament. But yeah, it's fun to play on teams like that because you don't believe that any game you shouldn't win and win handily. And that's how I felt for a majority of the second half of the season, my final 2 years.
Yeah. All right. So to wrap this up a little bit, one, I was curious on do you have any futures out there that we should be sprinkling some money on for this college hoop season? 2, do you have any futures on Kansas? And 3, do you believe this team can repeat? I guess those kind of tie together. Do you think this is actually possible?
As far as futures go, I hate futures because I don't like my money locked up for that long. I like to have some liquid money that I'm betting. But as far as can this team repeat and stuff, I said it from early on. I remember my dad, who I do the podcast with, I said it like I said after the preseason games that this team, I believe, has more potential to be better than last year's team. And he was like, oh, that's crazy talk and this and that. I think they're showing it. They've shown everything. There's pieces to a team that are very important. One being a good point guard that can lead you through things. Some, the defensive mindset from a couple guys that can just shut guys down. We have that. The ability to grind out, come back, put together stops in games where you're behind, all kinds of stuff. Multiple guys who can hit shots. I mean, Grady's getting face guarded the whole time. Unfortunately, they're going to have to figure out something for him because every team in the Big 12 is just going to do that. So maybe have him setting screens. I don't know exactly what they can do, but he has to be able to get more into the game. But they've shown they have other guys they can go to that can step up. I think that last part for me was just seeing what's going to happen with the 5 spot. And with what KJ has shown, I feel pretty confident in the fact that this team has everything they're going to need by the end of the year to compete and win it again. It just all comes down to how the tournament breaks. And it's so hard because, like, yes, can this team win? Yeah, there's a handful of teams every tournament. I would say maybe 5 to 8 most times that could win based off of, if things shake right for them. And they're going to be one of those teams again, if not towards the top half of that. It's just about how the tournament goes. And we've just talked about it, thanks to you guys, about that Oregon game in 2017. And if they can just avoid that or have that happen, in the earlier rounds, 100% this team can. And if I was betting futures, I would put some money on them to make it back to the Final Four and then win it again, because this team does have everything it needs, and it's going to come down to, I think, how they handle a team with some bigs. If they run into Purdue or something, like what do you do against ED? How do you handle a situation like that? But you have the best coach in the country. He's going to figure it out. And if you're putting money on anybody, I'm going to put my money on Coach Self with a team that has all the pieces they need and options off the bench that may not have even, shown their full potential yet. So there's more room for this team to grow moving forward. And we could see a really good team come March.
Yep. All right. Well, we'll let you get out of here. We appreciate you coming on. I will say this. So Landon does host a podcast. As he said, it's the Glue Guys podcast. You did that interview with Bill Self after the Natty last year, and I highly suggest any KU fans that have not listened to that to go back and listen to it, because it was rare. And it's like what we like to do with this podcast is get guys on and kind of just get away from the, typical media type stuff. And you guys got Bill to loosen up, and I thought it was awesome to listen to. So good work.
I appreciated that from him too, because he's like that with us off camera and stuff. But he does put on a different. He's head coach.
Yeah.
He has to be different when he does podcasts or interviews or whatever it may be. So it was nice to have him loosen up and open up. And I could tell that was something that he emphasized going into it. That he was going to, be like that. So I appreciated that. And we got some gems from that. So that was fun. And I've had a good time, being able to catch up with some guys through that podcast.
Yep. All right, man. Well, we appreciate you coming on, and who knows, might have you back before March. Yeah. We'll talk some more picks, more Hawks. So appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure. I'll be around. All I got to do is make sure my little 2 kids are okay. And outside of that, I'm pretty free. So yeah, I'd be happy to anytime.
Thank you for coming on, Lando.